This morning, I would like to invite you to listen to James chapter 3, verses 13 through 18. And here it is. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace. These are the words of God.
Thanks be to God. I brought my cake with me. Am I okay on the mic? Okay, take it on. Okay, good. I brought my cake with me this morning. I have this plaque in my office, and it says, I am fairly certain that given a cape and a nice tiara, I could save the world. Oh, yeah. Superheroes are all the go now, right? Yep. In movies, in books, even I think in the church, perhaps. We all know that feeling, that time in our lives where we think, if I was in charge, I could fix this. I know how to create this. I know how to save this. I know how to make it right. If only I was in charge. Hence the cape. If I only had that superhero cape, I could do this. Sadly, I think the cape and tiara approach to mission has been the motto in our church for a long time. It's been the approach of how we do mission. We identify a project and we know exactly how to save it. And I don't mean in the spiritual sense. We go into communities where people are different. Different economically, different culturally, different language, different in many ways, fewer resources perhaps, and we determine what those people need. Because we have the resources. We think we know what they need. We've got the cape. We show up to save the world because we believe we know what they need. It's a we and a they. This has been our model for mission in the church for a long time. As people who have the resources, we're called by faith, and we assume that we know what others need, but we don't ever pause to ask. We have the resources and we know how to fix the problems. We've got the cape. And who can argue with a good cape, right? Now, I know God called us to serve, but I would like to suggest and invite you to join me in losing the cape, in considering a different approach to how we do mission and outreach in the church. The words of James tell us that we are called to serve, but with gentleness and with wisdom. Another translation says, show your good life by deeds done in humility and in wisdom. It doesn't mention any capes. It doesn't mention saving anybody or having all the right answers. It means gentleness that comes from a relationship that you build with another, someone who is different than you. It comes from listening and learning more than you try to talk and teach. This is the part where I get a little bit uncomfortable, I'm not going to lie. I like my cape. It works for me. I like to be in control. I do have resources. I think I've got great answers to the world's problems, and I like the cape. It's a comfortable place for me. In fact, I think sometimes the cape becomes a part of a protection, a safety barrier, a sign or a symbol of the power and who has the power. In fact, I think the cape has become a symbol of the person with the power. The cape creates a safety zone, and it keeps us protected from what is the messiness of doing mission in a new way. What does mission look like without the cape? For many years, the church has been seen as a central part of what we do in the church is collecting things and then distributing things. We collect things that we have and we assume other people need and want, and then we distribute those things to others. But in this, we're simply giving stuff away. We're doing a project. We're not doing mission. We're doing something for people. We're doing something to people, but we're not doing something with people. I remember when I first arrived at Wesley Rankin it's been a little over 7 years ago now. Our largest program at this time was a massive toy and coat distribution program. Staff worked for months to get prepared. Churches and corporations from across the Metroplex donated toys and coats. Our gymnasium was packed to the brim with toys and coats. And on the morning of the distribution, there were people lined up down the street to receive these free things. There were families we only saw that once a year. I had no way to measure whether or not giving that toy or coat made any measurable difference in anybody's life. All I knew was that Walmart and Target had a really good sales season. The rest of the year, we struggled to pay electrical bills. We struggled to find support for programming that I knew would have a measurable impact. Reading programs, feeding the seniors, after-school tutoring programs. And it wasn't until I paused long enough to have a conversation with a member of our community and talked about this distribution program. The woman I spoke with, her name is Ophelia, and she has a son in our education program. She said, "Sarah, I don't need your free toys and I don't need your free coats." Of course, the Methodist in me was appalled. I said, "Well, why not?" Seemed like a reasonable question. She said, "Sarah, I can't read and I can't write. I need help educating my son. That's what's important to me is education. That's what's going to make a difference long term in his life. He needs help with homework. He needs a place to have enriching educational experiences that will make a difference for him." And so last summer at summer camp, her son John dissected a sheep brain. He loved it. He thought it was very cool. And to this very day, he can tell you all the parts in the brain and how they work. Made a big impression on him. He also took free martial arts classes at Wesley Rankin. And this past week, Johnny represented Texas in the nation in a competition and earned second place. All of this happened because we had a relationship with Ophelia and with John. A relationship where I could listen more than I talked, where I could learn more than I sought to teach. Ophelia is a part of our leadership council. There are 15 women who have taken classes now in leadership and how to run a meeting, how to come to consensus, how to take notes at a meeting, all those basic things that many of us learned growing up. This group of women have come together to learn, and Ophelia is one of those. They took a class in finance and small business, and then they decided to open a uniform store. They had learned about inventory and revenue and expenses, and so they opened at Wesley Rankin a uniform store so that we can make uniforms and school supplies available to the community, pennies on the dollar. And in the last year, these women have raised over $3,000 in the uniform store. And on their own decided that they would start a scholarship program at Wesley Rankin. That is true, real transformation. That's a relationship that allowed listening and ideas and people to be empowered and changed for long-term transformation. If we hadn't listened to Ophelia when she told us what her real need was, we would still have John and Ophelia and others like her waiting in a long line for a free coat or a free toy. It's easy to miss an important part of what Christ modeled for us in mission and outreach. It's a key piece. It's relationship. Relationship brings that long-term transformation. In giveaways and short-term projects, there's no sense of walking with a community. In godly transformation, we're simply giving stuff away and doing projects because we got the cape on. And sometimes when you got the cape on and you know all the answers and you got all the resources, you get blinded by the cape. It gets in your way. Now I know that relationships are messy. And long-term godly transformation is just that. It's long-term. It takes time. In his groundbreaking book, Toxic Charity, if you haven't read it, I would encourage you to do so. Robert Lupton looks at how we do mission and how our best intentions may actually be hurting those we seek to help. He says, churches want their members to feel good about serving the poor, but no one really wants to become involved in messy relationships. He goes on to say, most mission and service projects do not empower those that are served, engender healthy cross-cultural relationships, and they don't improve the local quality or long-term change in poverty. Ouch! Those words are hard to hear. But in many ways, I think I agree with Lupton and would suggest and invite the church to consider doing mission in a new way and thinking about how we do mission and build relationships with those in need. Again, hear the word of James. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life and your works that they are done in gentleness and wisdom. Nothing is mentioned about good works being done with stuff. These are virtues that are of God. Wisdom, humility, the core of a relationship, journeying together, working together with a community for change. My friend and colleague puts it like this: God doesn't consider me a project. I worship a God that cannot let me go. I worship a God who is in a deep and abiding relationship with me. A relationship. This experience requires trusting Christ, a willingness to follow a model that does get messy and uncomfortable. It's easier when we've got the cape on and we know the answers. Are you willing to risk your normal? Are you willing to maybe have your normal shaken up a bit, transformed through a messy relationship and a meaningful relationship? I'll give you an example of a relationship like this. We had a volunteer named Betsy who came from a wealthy area of our city to volunteer at Wesley Rankin. She came every Wednesday and she worked with Trinity every time she was there, doing homework and reading. Well, one afternoon they had finished their work and Trinity decided to draw a picture. So they got out the markers and the paper and Trinity began to draw a picture, an outline of the skyline of Dallas. She had the Union Tower and she had the big neon green building, and then over in the right corner she had a small square building. Well, Betsy, the volunteer, didn't recognize that building, and so she turned to Trinity and said, "Oh, you've done a great job drawing the skyline of Dallas, but what is this building here?" And without a beat, Trinity responded, "Oh, that's the bail bonds building." Betsy was taken back. Betsy had never been to the bail bonds building, but second grade Trinity had been. Right in that moment, it showed a trust in their relationship that Trinity shared, and also a willingness for Betsy to be a little uncomfortable and to change her understanding of what normal is, because she thought normal was her existence. So they both learned in that moment. That's a kingdom relationship. That is transformational. And the story of Wesley Rankin has been transformed into true kingdom relationships as soon as we made that change from stuff and capes to relationships and listening and learning as much as we seek to teach and talk. My role is to build relationships with a community, and it changes how I think. I will never be the same for having experienced the relationships I have with kids at Wesley Rankin. We no longer take decisions from a perspective of the state. We walk with the community and ask questions. Alex is a friend of mine. I've known him for a little over 7 years now. Alex lives in a house with a towel for a front door. He has spent 3 years in 3rd grade, and he finally got promoted to 4th grade, and he was so excited. He came to my office. He said, "Sarah, guess what? I got promoted. I'm going to 4th grade." I said, "Oh, Alex, I'm so proud of you." I cried. I said, "What are you looking forward to most in 4th grade?" And he said, "I get to go to music class." Now, that wasn't what I expected, because I had to drag my kids to music class. I had to force them to learn to play the piano. I drug them to youth choir. And here's a kid who's been struggling in 3rd grade, and all he wants out of 4th grade is music class. From that conversation that day, we listened to Alex and made a shift in all of our after-school and summer camp programmings to offering enrichment activities. That's why John got to dissect that sheep's brain. That's why the very first summer that Alex came to camp, he learned to play Amazing Grace on the flute recorder. And that'll preach, right? That's a young man who's struggling. He's still struggling. The roots of our community go back to Bonnie and Clyde. The notorious gang, literally West Dallas was their hood. And recently I discovered something new and intriguing about Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow that I hadn't known before. Clyde was a musician. He loved music, and Bonnie was a talented writer of poetry. Somewhere along the way, they chose gang life and crime. And when they died in a shootout 5 years after 5 years worth of crime spree, when they died in a shootout with the police, their car riddled with bullets, in the back seat among Bonnie's belongings, they found letters and letters of poetry. And also found a saxophone, Clyde's saxophone. When I think about Bonnie and Clyde, that reality of Bonnie and Clyde, musician and a poet, I think about the kids at Wesley Rankin Community Center. They are more likely, statistically, to be arrested and go to jail than they are to graduate high school. That's wrong. They don't want to fail. They just simply need somebody to take a chance on them. When Alex was a kid, Alex, he's a kid who fails and he fails and he fails. Clyde Barrow evidently failed and failed and failed, but he just wanted to be a musician. Alex is 17 now, and he continues to struggle. He's been in juvenile detention more than once. He knows I tell his story. He's still around the center, and he's there at camp this summer. But he's spent more time in drug houses than he has in a home. He's charismatic. He's a good-looking kid. He would be captain of the soccer team if he grew up in my neighborhood, or he'd be in the band. He wouldn't be missing meals and doing drugs. A relationship with Alex is really messy because he doesn't make the choices that I know he should make. He doesn't make those choices. But we still find for Alex a place of grace and of hope, and model through Christ our relationship with Alex. It was built over many years, and it is probably now the most stable relationship he has in his life. When he comes to my office, whenever he comes to the center, he comes to my office for a hug, and we catch up, and then when he leaves, I always remind him that I love him. Will you join me and lose the cape? Just take time to build a messy, godly relationship with someone. An improbable friend, perhaps. Somebody different than you, from whom you can learn and grow and know more about yourself. The children at Wesley Rankin don't know Jan Deering's name, and you don't know Jan Deering's name either, but they know her because she's the lunch lady. She's popular. Her church sponsors a week of our summer camp every summer. They've done it now for 6 years. And when it was announced in her church that they were going to sponsor this week of camp at Wesley Rankin, she said that God put on her heart that she was to feed those children. Not only was she supposed to cook the food for the kids, she was supposed to pay for the food for the kids. She answered that call, and she has built improbable friendships with some amazing kids. There were only 100 campers that first year she cooked and fed them, and now there are 250 campers, and she is still cooking and feeding those kids with a special meal. I happened to come along one day. There were 2 boys waiting in line to get their meal, and Jan was passing out the plates, and one of the boys leaned over to the boy next to him and said, "She's the lunch lady. She feeds us just like we were her family." That's a kingdom relationship. That transforms hearts and lives long term. That's not about stuff. It's not about a cake. This year, Wesley Rankin took our Go-Go Girls program to New York City. What were we thinking? We took our Go-Go Girls. They hadn't ever even been on an airplane. That most of them not been out of Texas, and some of them not out of Dallas. And we took them to New York. Why? Because 5 years ago, we were bold enough in our relationship to say, "You girls can dream. And you can dream big, and you can set goals, and you can achieve those goals." And they said, "We want to go camping, and we want to go to New York City." The camping was a little bit easier than New York City. But that's transformational. That's life-changing. We also took 25 youth on a civil rights tour through 5 different states. Again, most of them had never left our state. They went on a civil rights tour, walking across the Selma Bridge, sitting at a lunch counter to learn about the history of racism and oppression, and how their own life story was far too similar to that. We stood with families this past year. Someone asked me this morning, how's it going at Wesley Rankin? How was your last year? And I said, we've had a rough last year. We stood with over 200 families being evicted from their homes. That's trauma. The families were being evicted because of city codes and politics and development and greed, and we stood with them. It was messy. In all of that messiness of watching homes torn down, will you risk not knowing the answers? Will you risk asking questions to learn and being willing for God and God's amazing strength to guide us in the way we should do mission? Are you willing to not know the answers? Will you bear witness to the love of Christ and to the ongoing, messy, meaningful, grace-filled relationships that you will discover? To say to another, "I love you and I hear your voice," this is a godly act. Hearing a voice that has been oppressed, listening to that voice, allowing yourself to be changed because of that voice, that is a godly kingdom relationship to have. We are not called to fix. We're not called to do. We are called to bear witness to Christ. Will you join me and lose the cape? Bear witness to Christ in all that you do, in all that you say, and in all of your messy relationships, and truly see mission in a new way through Christ. In the name of Christ, amen.